Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, once again we'll be breaking this thing down verse by verse into factual, logical statements in English so we can understand who or what is Allah, what does he mean in the message in this book, and more importantly for us non-believers, how does this interact and affect us in the world, in our lives today. So before I start, as I always do, I'm going to tell you now, if you have any doubts as to the things I'm about to say, or my factual accuracy in the statements I have made previously, please first buy and read one of these. And once you have done so, you'll recognise that every single word I'm going to say to you now, or have previously said, is 100% true to the words of Allah in his book and what Muslims believe today. So, if you have been keeping up with the series and you saw the last one, you'll remember how Allah has started to brainwash his faithful Muslims into a kind of Islamic favoured socialism in which he gives them all the money, they give it all back to him, and for giving him all their money, they will get social benefits and he will love them. Although the last word on that is, you hate those evil Jews and Christians over there because they have all the money, you have to take that money, but in order for Islamic socialism to be preserved in the words of Allah, you cannot spend or keep this money, you have to give it back to Allah. Otherwise, off with your head, you're dead, and you'll burn forever in fire. So, with that in mind, let's carry on. 194. O ye believers, give all your wealth and produce back to us, who created it for you. Never deviate into things which are not my command. You may keep nothing of it for yourself, except where you are blinded to your own sinfulness, and know that Allah wants for nothing except your obedience and your worship. End of verse. So let's break this down. He starts off, O ye believers, so he's obviously just talking to his Muslims, and the reason he's talking to all his Muslims is because those evil, sinful Jews and Christians over there, they're the ones the wealth is coming from. They currently have all the wealth, the bounty of Allah, and that is where you're going to get it, O Muslims. So, O ye believers, give all your wealth and produce back to us, i.e. Allah's the one that made it and gave it to them and mind controlled them to be doing really well and have all that wealth. But your job, O Muslims, is to go and recover it. You're just redistributing the wealth back to Allah as part of his Islamic socialism. Never deviate into things which are not my command. So once again, Allah is cracking the whip on his Muslims and saying, while you're doing this, O Muslims, while you're robbing and pillaging from those guys over there, those evil Satans and Christians who we're going to behead later, don't be doing anything which is not exactly commanded in my book, says Allah, who is the author. While you are doing this, executing my commands which you shall not be deviating from, you may keep nothing of it for yourself. Like I said, Islamic socialism. You may keep nothing of it for yourself, except where you are blinded by your own sinfulness. So what Allah is saying here, O Muslims, is if after you have robbed and pillaged all the Westerners, you keep any of that for yourself, if not all of the money you rob goes back to Allah at the mosque, the only reason you're keeping that money is because you are blinded by your own sinfulness. It's not because you need to eat, or because you might like, after a hard day of robbing, raping and pillaging, to enjoy some of your money, or maybe it's your wife's birthday. Actually no, they don't do wife's birthdays because she's just a plant pot. If you want to know why women are only plant pots for the ploughing of a man's seed, please check 3 episodes ago, it's explained perfectly in there. But for now, back to the socialism. So Allah makes it clear, although all the money you are robbing is yours, it isn't, it's going to go back to Allah so he can redistribute it back to you in later blessings. And if you don't do this, know that Allah wants nothing except your obedience and your worship. He doesn't actually want the money which he gave you, which the Jews now have, which you're going to be stealing back and giving back to him. No, he doesn't want that money at all. All he wants is your obedience and your worship in his grace and wisdom. If you don't believe me, it says so in here, says Allah in his own book. 195. Satan threatens you with poverty and bids to cause you to behave unseemly. Allah promises you victory and his bounty, for Allah considers all and knoweth all things. End of verse. Now, interestingly enough, Satan threatens you with poverty, but in the episode we just watched, it is Allah who is going to reward you for putting yourself in poverty. So he's either saying that you are actually Satan while you're following his commands and worshipping him, or he is Satan because he's commanding you into the poverty which Satan threatens you with. Keeping up here? It's very snakily written. Allah doesn't want you to think too hard about what he's saying. And as we know, if you question or doubt, off the head you're dead, and you will burn forever in eternal suffering. So that is the reason, if we break this down, Satan threatens you with poverty. Satan bids to cause you to behave unseemly. It's definitely not Allah. Allah is definitely not Satan. That's what I'm getting from this. Allah is literally trying to separate himself from Satan by saying, even though I just put you in poverty in the last episode, O Muslims, it's actually Satan that wants you to live in poverty. Even though last time I told you that you have to rape and pillage and murder and enslave, it's actually Satan that wants you to behave unseemly. So he's causing a little bit of cognitive dissonance, I feel, here in his book, The Quran of the Muslims, by telling in the last episode his Muslims to do all these bad things and be in poverty, but then in this 195 saying that it's actually Satan who's causing that and Allah's causing all the good stuff. Of course he is, because Allah promises you only victory and his bounty, which he's unfortunately left in the pockets of everybody else. So go off and rob them of his bounty, and if you keep any of it, Allah considers all. He knoweth all things. I'm watching you. That's what he's saying. Muslims, once you've robbed all these people, give it all to me, says Allah in his book. And if you keep any of it, I will know. That's what this means. Let's carry on. 196. Wisdom is for those who he doth loveth, who will receive a wealth overflowing and be fine. But none will receive recognition except those who understand Allah's true teachings. End of verse. So if we break this one down, this is very interesting, isn't it? Wisdom, which is really weird. I mean, he's never mentioned wisdom in the past apart from to tell us how wise he is in his book. Now he's saying, wisdom is for those he doth loveth. So if he loves you, i.e., as we found out in the last episode, if you rob these Satan Jews and evil hypocrite Christians, if you rob all those guys and give all your money back to Allah, then you will be loved. And if you do that and you're loved, you will get wisdom. So only thieves and rapists and murderers are going to be wise under Allah's end times genocidal prophecy in the Islamic socialist dictatorship of Allah, when all the Jews, Christians, apostates and atheists are headless and all the women are slaves. You will also be wise, as well as dead, because remember, you have to be dead for this to happen. If you don't believe me, read it in here. It's definitely what he says. If you don't believe me, read it yourself. Even though it's fucking dumb. And then he finishes off, but none will receive recognition except those who understand Allah's true teachings. Now this, I feel, is a very curious statement to make, because as far as we know, nobody's receiving any recognition anyway, Allah. As you said last time, and you said in previous times, no one is to ask for praise or recognition or reward. They are to keep their fucking heads down, robbing and pillaging, giving it to you, obediently praying and worshipping you, and not doing anything else. Remember? So none will receive recognition except those who understand Allah's true teachings. So if this isn't your true teaching, Allah, if you're just slave driving these poor Muslims to rob, pillage, murder, steal and enslave so that they can top up your mosque fund, if that's not your true teaching, what is your true teaching, Allah? We'll keep that in mind. Let's see if we can figure out what his true teaching is if it is not what he's already been telling us. 197. Whatever you promise away to others or give to others in charity will be rewarded none. For Allah see all. Wrongdoing will be punished and no help shall ever reach them from me. End of verse. That is good, isn't it? So if we break this down, now I'm starting to understand Allah's true teaching. Because even though in the past he said, be charitable, give zakat to the mosque, you know, whenever you give charity, it's got to go to the mosque. Now he's saying, whatever you promise away to others or give to others in charity. So he's saying you could actually be giving charity to others who aren't the mosque. But if you do, I will know, says Allah in the book, and if you do that, you'll be rewarded none, for Allah sees all. Wrongdoing will be punished. This is Allah's true teaching. Allah's true teaching is, even though he's mind controlling you to do what he wants, sometimes you can just not be doing what he wants. So the mind control doesn't work all the time. And if it doesn't work, you have to mindfully do it on your own. Otherwise, you're a wrongdoer, you will be punished, and no help shall ever reach you from Allah, says Allah in his book. It's fucking mental. So I think this is the first time Allah's actually kind of hinted towards his mind control not being all that good. Because he's mind controlling the Jews and Christians to collect all the money for the Muslims who he's going to mind control over there to steal it from so they can give it back to him. But whatever you promise away to others, even though he's never told you to do that, so actually you can do things he hasn't told you to do. But if you do them, you won't be rewarded. Remember, he's always watching you. And no help shall ever reach them from me. So what he's saying here, between the lines, even though it's not expressly written, if I'm understanding this right, whatever you promise away to others or give to others in charity will be rewarded none from him, but someone else might, who he's not telling you about. And after you do that and he punishes your wrongdoing in his eyes, no help shall reach them from him, but may arrive from someone else. So is this, dear reader, Allah actually uncovering the fact that there is a God? Even though he said in the last episode, or the one before, and I quote, "There is no God, there is only the man who lives and breathes, who is self-subsisting, who owns everything and never sleeps." This guy, describing himself, if there is no God, who is going to be giving you the help that isn't you, Allah? I think he's suggesting here that there is a God, and it's just not him, but he doesn't want to reveal who that is, and he doesn't want you to think about doing any charities or nice things for anyone else, because he will know and he will punish you, so says Allah in his own book. 198. Should you do these things, they take from the cup of Allah, and you shall be stained upon with evil, whether you conceal or proclaim yourself. You can tell I've had no sleep. I'll start again. 198. What ye shall do, they take from the cup of Allah, and you shall be stained upon with evil, whether you conceal or proclaim yourself righteous. This is not the best for you, and Allah knows what you do. So, if we break this down, I'm getting the distinct impression here, Allah, that you are not feeling yourself. You know, you're kind of a little bit insecure about your Muslims not doing exactly what you want them to do, despite the fact that you're mind controlling them. You're hinting towards them doing things that you don't know about, and you've said 5 times so far, "I'll be watching you, I'll know everything you do, don't be doing things I haven't told you, I'll catch you out, don't be doing those, I will know." But doth protest too much, that's what I think. Allah clearly doesn't have mind control, clearly doesn't have future sight. The only way he can control you, O Muslims, is by forcing you to do this willingly. Which is why he claims, mind control on everyone else, because if they're doing things willingly, surely that means you can, O Muslims. I'm just saying, if you want to willingly not do this stuff and be rich and happy like those guys you have to kill in his orders, maybe you could just do that and it would be fine. And then he rounds out by saying, if you conceal or proclaim yourself righteous, this is not the best for you, and Allah knows well what you do. So if you do other things which he has not ordered you to do, whether you say that you're doing these things openly, or whether you conceal them so that you don't admit them to Allah or other people who Allah is controlling, Allah knows what you do. And this is another time when he's saying, right, just in case you didn't get it the last 6 times that I told you, don't do anything I haven't told you to, because I will fucking know and I will punish you. Whether you tell me or not, whether you tell other people, whether you completely conceal it, I'll fucking know. That's what this means. And that brings us to our last verse, 199. It is not for you to guide others. Allah alone guides and advises every man. Give charity, praise or labour only to the face of Allah's orders. Then you shall see your reward in the end day and be dealt with fairly. End of verse, end of reading. So that's a little bit of an odd turn of fate, isn't it? A little twist there in the narrative of Allah. You shall not guide others. Allah alone guides and advises every man. So we know Muslims aren't allowed to tell other Muslims what to do, or in fact tell the non-believers what to do, apart from if they're telling the non-believers to do this. So it really is like Islamic socialism. Nobody's allowed to do anything apart from snitch when they're not doing this. Then they have to do more of this. And even if you try and advise anyone else, you're not allowed to advise them. Only this is allowed to advise them. So this is Allah stamping his authority in your mind, O Muslims, and everyone else who you bully and enslave. Don't get any ideas about not doing my fucking orders, says Allah in the book. And then he says, praise or labour only in the face of Allah's orders. So he's literally, this whole page has been about, you can actually do other things that Allah hasn't told you about. You can praise people, you can give charity to people, you can do labour that he hasn't told you to do. Muslims, read between the lines here, guys. Allah, although he is telling you he mind controls you and he'll punish you if you break that and do anything else, he's insecure about you doing what the fuck you want. He's saying here, you can give charity to others. You can do things he hasn't commanded you to do. You can do labour for yourself. You can earn money for yourself. You can drink, you can gamble. You can be faithful to a single wife and not have 10. And you don't have to do this ridiculous fucking worshipping all the time. You don't have to do that. And he's saying here, only do all that stuff if you're doing it into Allah's face. So it means if you do it behind his face, i.e. behind his back, he won't fucking know you've done it. And then he says, if you do everything here, so don't sneak behind me where I can't see you guys, says Allah in the book. If you do that, then you shall see your reward in the end day, and then you'll be treated fairly. I.e., you're not getting any reward before the end day, despite the fact that you're doing everything he wants in full view and not sneaking about behind his back. And only then will you get your reward in the end day. Only then will you be treated fairly in the end day. But he doesn't say that it's him who's going to reward you or treat you fairly. So once again, I think Allah, ixnay beyond the oxnay, he's telling you God is real. That's what I'm taking from this between the lines. Because he's clearly saying, only do all this stuff that I'm ordering you to do in my face. Don't do it behind me where I can't see you because I'm mind controlling you and I'll punish you. So the threat is there. If you do things out of sight of Allah, if you do them behind his back, i.e. if you become a Christian and have a really happy life and earn loads of money, if you do that, Allah's face is going to see it. But the back of his fucking head will not. That's what I'm reading from this. And then he finishes up by saying, if you do all this stuff in his face and not behind his back, then you shall see reward in the end day and be dealt with fairly. But he doesn't say by him. And he doesn't say, I'll be watching you. So the between the lines implication is, if you do all this stuff that he's not telling you, i.e. if you're a good person in Christianity and you give charity to others and you work hard for money that you own, then you shall see the reward and be dealt with fairly by someone else. Which I think is the God that he fucking hates so much. And that's the end of our reading. So in conclusion, guys, I think this is the last we're going to hear about Allah's Islamic socialist dictatorship instructions. But we can pretty much see what his general idea of what society should be is. His general idea of society is you go and collect all the money which he's given to the pockets of the Jews and Christians. That's the only reason they've got money, because he's given it to them. You have to redistribute that wealth back, not to yourself, but to him. If you don't do it, he'll be mad, and you have to do it where he can see, because even though he tells you he can see everything, he specifically says, do it to my face. Don't do it behind my face where I will not be able to see you, is what the implication is. And he says he won't reward you or deal with you fairly, but if you do all this stuff in front of him, you will be rewarded and treated fairly. Not by him though, because he said throughout the book that he's not going to be fair to you and he's not going to reward you unless you kill the Jews. And that's the end of this video. So I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. I had a great time with this episode. In fact, the last two, the socialism thing has just blown my mind. But what's going to blow your mind more is when we're back at 7:15 tomorrow morning. We're going to go through some more inane ramblings of the illiterate warlord Allah in his command in the Quran of the Muslims. And until then, I'll bid you a good night, God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. What the hell has this guy got against charity? Why does he need all this money if he's God? Anyway, we'll find out tomorrow at 7:15 AM. I'll see you there. Until then, have a good night, God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.